Hello, I'm Ash Quigley, and this is the Take Back Your Mind series, the place where we hear real stories from insightful and inspiring individuals about how they have reclaimed their own minds and now live life to its fullest. In these conversations, you'll hear from people across all different walks of life, and they'll share what it means not only to be human, but how they also navigate their inner and outer worlds with a little more ease and intention. Now, today we'll be joined by the empowering and inspiring Amanda Waaldyk, a doctor of Chinese medicine, a clinic founder, and yoga teacher. And it's Amanda's vision to create and build a community for women to join together, to share, to connect, and experience their fertility journey through acupuncture and yoga. Now, Mands has not only been a huge part of my own personal fertility journey, but she is also a leading expert in all things women's health. But her story wasn't always about all things well-being. However, as an ex-addict, as you'll likely hear today, throughout her own journey, she's undertaken some pretty remarkable and life-changing shifts in order to take back her own mind and to help others do the same. So let's get into it. Hello, Mands. How are you?
Good. How are you going, Aisling?
I'm good. I'm so delighted that you can be here and be part of Take Back Your Mind. And the theme being what it is, I thought it's important that we ask all of our guests firstly to check in with themselves. So on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is being tired, flat, and 10 is being energized and motivated and really good, where do you reckon you're sitting today?
I'm sitting at around a 6.
A 6.
Yeah.
How so?
I just think just over halfway. It's the change in weather. And
Yes.
our daughter's been in hospital last night. And so it's been a big few months in terms of just energy output. So yeah, just flying at 6 today. What about
Well,
you? Where are you at?
oh, look, I reckon, yeah, I'm probably similar, 6.5. I recently had a bit of an accident on my foot and I was put in a moon boot yesterday. So navigating that, it's actually taken out, as you said, about that energy output. It's taken a lot more energy than usual to do the smallest of tasks. So just figuring that out at the moment and trying to embrace the slowness and the rest rather than the go, go, go. But I guess that's the reason probably why I have the moon boot. So um, it's all good. Well, as I said, thank you so much for being part of this. For anyone that might not be listening, or might be listening who might not be aware of you, I have been aware of you for a really long time. You've been someone who's been both on my radar and someone that I've worked personally with for a number of years now. But for those who may be listening who might not know you, could you tell us a little bit more about you and your journey to this point? So what maybe some pivotal moments might have been along that journey to get you to where you are right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's a life journey, right? I'll be 45 this year. And I and I think there's been so many of those big catalysts along the way that have, changed the trajectory of my life. Coming from a sporting background and doing 2 years of nursing, I ended up having my own health crisis. So I actually had a heroin addiction from 18 to 21. And in that, I was so unwell mentally and physically sick. And so I went and saw a Chinese medicine doctor. And that was really what changed everything. Fell in love with Chinese medicine. And from that moment, it was like, oh my God, within my heart of hearts, I knew that this was what I had to study. So I remember one day waking up and looking at myself in the mirror, and I thought, who has this girl become? I was a shadow of my former self, someone that was playing state league netball, that had completely turned her life upside down. And then in an abusive relationship and weighing 55 kilos And I just said, this is not me. And so from that day forth, I made a promise to myself that I would never return to doing that again, because I just completely, destroyed my soul. And my soul at that moment was having a conversation with me. And so, yes, I made a choice to change my life. And so I was very lucky in the sense I had supportive parents, and mum helped me get me through those sort of like withdrawals and whatnot. And so I was lucky to stumble upon Ken Leong, who ended up being one of my uni lecturers at school. He was sort of the big catalyst for me to studying Chinese medicine on my healing journey. So that was that moment that I started my Chinese medicine career. And then, of course, graduating from Chinese medicine, I went and lived in China for a year. And that was a very incredible time in terms of learning, going back to the roots from where Chinese medicine came from, but also I was looking after a patient who had lupus of the brain. So every morning at 5 a.m., she would have an epileptic fit, and I was her carer. I would dress her, feed her. It was pretty amazing, the relationship that we had together. And I looked after her. And so that was like my first experience as a carer, and just seeing the amount of effort that goes into that, that people, dedicate their lives to being carers. It really takes a special kind of person to be able to do something like that. And so Gillian ended up passing away, sadly. She had 2 young children. She ended up becoming trapped within her own body. Mentally, she was fine, but physically her body gave up on her. And so it was just, I guess it's really hard to watch someone deteriorate, right? When you are mentally fine, but then it's the physicality of your body that gives up, right? Still makes me cry because she had 2 young children. And I guess then I came back and I set up my business, and that has been, I guess, it's been a solid rock for me. I think that my life, my interesting life and colorful life, it gives me an opportunity to really see the shadow side of people, but also to be able to hold space for them when they are going through huge transformations. I don't know why I'm crying.
Oh, I don't know how you're not. How you wouldn't be. What an incredible story. And to hear of that change and that journey and that transformation for you, from someone who was struggling so much in their own selves and facing their own shadow side and your own demons. I'm sure that they talk, I know, a lot about addiction, that it's finding a greater purpose in some way to be of service to something other than you.
Yes.
And for you to have that with that woman, sounds just like the most incredible experience. And to be able to not only support her, but actually find a bit more of yourself within that. And what a powerful and beautiful thing to do. And I'm sorry that she passed.
Thanks. Yeah, same. And then it's too, I've witnessed a lot of death. I watched my mum pass away. And that was really quite profound, of seeing the physical, of seeing her soul actually leave her body. I think that was just such a really, the fragility of life, but then to see when you're in the work that we both do, to see the actual soul leave the physical, that was really profound. That's can't really, yes, I think that was a huge moment in my life, as well, to really kind of, and I guess interestingly enough, I am in the field that I am in women's health, but fertility is watching that whole life cycle. And here we are again now in winter, the 2 of us, and you're in your moon boot, and it's time for us to slow down and be in that hibernation period, really.
Absolutely. What is it that made you mentioned there that you do specialize with women's health and fertility, as you would have studied, Chinese medicine and acupuncture, that I'm sure at the time that would have been a bit more broad spectrum. What was it that made you hone in on that area specifically?
So it was when I came back, I was doing sports medicine because I had a background in Plain State League netball. And so I thought I was going to be doing sports medicine. And then, of course, women just started appearing at my door. So that's always a sign from the universe. And I didn't think that I'd be doing gynecology or fertility, but here we are today. And so I think, sometimes we can have ideas of what we think we want to do, and then it just takes a different path, doesn't it? But I think it's been open to allowing, really, and just seeing what comes forth.
That's it. Going, I guess, with what's appearing at the time and listening to that. I mean, you do such important work in helping women of all ages and life stages to better understand their bodies and also their minds, I guess, holistically, and the two and the impact that both has on one another, myself included. What have you noticed has been the main challenges that have been that are generally faced by women, but also more broadly speaking, whether, more generally or even over the past few years, has there been any changes?
I think there's just been a huge change in the sense that so many people are actually disconnected to themselves. And that can be disconnected physically, mentally, emotionally, and that our environment creates so much stress, and that our nervous systems are in this constant flight, fight, freeze. And when we're in our when we're in that survival mode, is that how can we actually find peace within? And definitely seen a huge increase in anxiety and depression since COVID. Is that there's generally more people living in fear, and also too that disconnection from community and tribe, which is what our reptilian brain is programmed for. For tribe. And so I guess that's been a huge one. And of course, in the field, it's really seen a lot of women disconnected to their bodies and understanding the inner wisdom of their bodies, from their menstrual cycle to fertility, and really those huge rites of passage from puberty all the way through to menopause.
And I guess, do you see a lot of people understanding that link between the two? That stress response, fight, flight, freeze, with fertility and menstrual cycle and overall general health.
Yes. I mean, yes, I think when they come in and then we actually take time to go through everything, then they can understand that connection of what actually cortisol, the impact that that then has on our menstrual cycle, causing irregular ovulation or stopping periods, really sort of affecting our fertility. But fertility is so much more than just actually, pregnancy. It's about how fertile we are in our life, and the things that we want to create and the things that we want to birth, and that doesn't necessarily have to be children. So um, yeah, it's really important work.
And often, I guess, something that people don't necessarily take the time to think about until something is out of sync or out of place or not necessarily in flow, that's probably the point that they come to you, but it's not necessarily something that we are educated as growing up or have that understanding of.
Yeah, that's a big one, Ashling, is that we're not educated in schools about our fertility. Essentially, it's just something that's not really spoken about. And I think that's a lot in the West, is that all the things that matter, that are important, are really considered to be taboo or stigma. And so it's important to have these conversations to really normalize everything. I mean, to normalize mental health, to normalize fertility, to normalize periods, because if we continue to keep not talking about these things, these issues, well, they're actually at the forefront, and we need to be speaking about them because they have a huge impact on our overall health, and our ability to be able to communicate, to interact. and then feel comfortable. If we don't feel comfortable to talking to someone, obviously that a lot of the time is we don't even feel comfortable with ourselves. So it's like it's that internal, then it's reflected externally as well.
And I know specifically when it comes to fertility and female health, there can be often a lot of shame around it. And I know even in my own experience how it can feel difficult to talk about it because you almost feel like there's something not wrong or not right with you, you know. So then it nearly creates this vicious cycle that just continues on and perpetuates until you actually do go and speak to someone about it, which is not doing yourself or your body any favors, really.
I know, and I think, and that's the hard part, isn't it? Because I think that it's, and then once we actually do open those conversations, we often find that yes, our friend's been going through something similar, or someone that they know has been going through something similar, but there's been so much I guess emphasis on putting on making particularly females feel like that there's something wrong, and and just throwing out things like such as age and whatnot. I think that that just has a huge detriment, and we don't want to talk about it because we do feel like part of us is failing. And I think that's really the hardest part.
Mm,
And we're not failing. It's just that it's just essentially finding sometimes the piece of the puzzle that's missing.
mm.
Um, and then in those conversations, when we have these conversations too, then it's like someone can give us advice, right? And then that advice can then be, oh, okay, I know someone, you can see this person, or I've got this person that you can see. So sometimes that then provides a solution through having conversation.
Yeah, like you said, often when you do start having those conversations, initially you realize that no, you aren't alone. And a lot of this stuff, I know in my own experience, you recognize that it's actually so much more common than you think. And
Mm.
that having the conversations is a real source not only of solace, but normalizes experiences for other people too, which is an incredible thing to happen. And
Yes, there's power in in sharing your story, really, isn't there?
absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, especially with this specific conversation series, is all around taking back your mind and having those open conversations around mental health. You spoke a little bit about your experience and your own journey with addiction, but I'd love to have a chat briefly about, I guess, your mental health journey as a whole. What has been your own experience with mental health?
So it's been a big one actually. I don't really share that often, but when you give up heroin, you shouldn't actually smoke pot. You shouldn't smoke marijuana because it causes a chemical imbalance. So during that time, I ended up having drug-induced psychosis. So what my actual reality wasn't my reality. So I had to train my mind that what I was thinking wasn't actually a reality. So that was really interesting. That was sort of like my first introduction to meditation, into Vipassana. And so I had to do a lot of work around, also to being able to clean up my act in sense of everything that I was putting into my body. So then going into a completely holistic lifestyle of putting in organic foods, and sort of really like, in yoga, when we go through the koshas, my mental body doing things that were going to support my mental state. And that was then speaking to a counselor, of course, and having the support from then doing meditation, and then coming back to doing exercise, because exercise was a big part of my life, and that also then helps you to get into daily habits. And we are these cyclical beings, and we do need to have daily habits, so when we're in rhythm, so then we can kind of get back to our rhythm, and as you were saying earlier, get back to your flow. And so of course, like, kind of sometimes one addiction will go to another addiction, but at least this was a healthy addiction. And then went into doing training for half Ironman. So that was good because it was getting my serotonin levels back. It was getting me back into community as well. And then being part of a community just felt wholesome. It was like on the weekends, going out for a bike ride, or going to meet someone down at the tan and do a train. And so mental health for me is a big one. I'm a regular meditator now, so I studied Vedic meditation and have a regular practice, and so that's part of my daily routine. And then it's also too just checking in really, in terms of like what my internal dialogue is. And I feel like I've done a lot of work now that my mind's actually pretty good. I don't have a lot of ruminating thoughts. When I come home from work, I can switch off at night and go to sleep. So I think it's like, anything, you train a muscle, right? And the mind is a muscle. And so it's just repeating that training and then expanding from that and trying new things. And sometimes because one thing may not resonate with you, right? So you go on to try something different. So some people like guided meditation, or other people like to do a mantra. And I think it's just about, being out in nature, even. It's just connecting us back to those things that make us feel good inside and that connect us back to feeling a sense of groundedness, so we can essentially just come back home. I feel like we're not taught, I think the younger generation, there's a different consciousness, but we're taught to abandon ourselves, like completely leave ourselves, and then we eventually end up having to come back, right? Come back home. And I think that's the biggest gift, is if I had have learned meditation 20 years ago, I would have found that, or yoga, right? Because yoga, love yoga. I don't think I would have gone maybe and done the things that I did. But look, there's always a reason. And the reason for that was obviously to be on this path now, to be able to be of service and to support people.
Yeah, and I guess being able to support people from that level of experience of having been there, and how much more authentic and genuine I guess that is, and relatable. Um,
Yeah.
you talked there as well about the importance for you of checking in with yourself. How often do you do that, and how do you do that?
Every day. It's just like,
Good, good.
yeah, it's just like having a conversation with a mate. Hey, how you going? Hey, Mands, how you going? Okay, how are you today? Literally. And then I'll do that at the end of my meditation.
And are there any specific signs or signals for you personally that tell you, oh, I'm not doing so great today, or I'm not in a great space?
Yeah, it's really an embodied experience. So I will feel quite heavy within myself. And it's just, I think it's a feeling really, isn't it? A sense of just flatness, a bit of meh. And then it's like, okay, when I check in and ask how I am, it's like, well, like you said today, how are you feeling? It's like, well, I'm feeling the six. I'm feeling heavy, feeling a bit blur. And it's also too because of what's been going on in my life externally.
Mm. And I guess you talked to a number of different resources that you've got at your disposal that maybe you've tried and tested, like your meditation, your yoga. Are there anything that you've tried and tested along the way that you've said, that's not really for me?
So, like Vipassana was amazing. I did that twice, but there was like, I just couldn't actually stick to the practice. What else have I done? I think I've tried so many different things. I've just recently got a freezer at home and got to have it started ice baths. So
Awesome.
I know. So, oh, hang on, sorry. I'm just doing, it's connected to the,
So
so
you've
just,
got your ice baths.
yeah, just doing ice dipping at the moment.
How are you
Which
finding
is,
that?
oh, so rejuvenating. Thanks. That's a game changer.
What a test in resilience too.
So you just feel it's like just this rejuvenation, right?
Mm, mm. And anything else then? I know we talked a little bit about circuit training and things like that that might have been a bit more damaging before we came on to record. A bit more damaging or depleting, I guess, than nourishing. Is there anything like that that, used to be something I guess you would lean on a lot of? But that nowadays you say, hey, you know what, that's actually not serving me so well anymore.
Yeah, I think that's a huge one, is that coming from doing that yang type of activity all the time to now really just honoring my body. I'd punished it for so many years that it was like, why do I need to punish it anymore? And that with I just had, had hurt myself doing F45 recently too. And my body was going, nah, man, you've just face the fact, you've got to hang up your F45 boots, okay? um,
It, It can be difficult though, because I know, and as well, you talked a little bit about going from one addiction to another, from heroin into Iron Man, for example. Like I know in my own self, like that rigidity of, having to do something that's nearly almost like a compulsion of like, have to practice hot yoga 6, 7 days a week, and it has to be this and it has to be that. Hey, that actually also has a negative effect. And it's something that you can think of as being helpful because on paper it looks like a healthy habit of some sort, but actually it's really not.
I agree. And that's the thing. I don't think we're taught that. And I think it's through the practice of, having an embodied experience with practicing yoga that you start to really fine tune that of like what your body really needs, rather than just being on that autopilot of getting up in the morning and going, yeah, I'm going to go do my exercise. I'm going to go to F45 because my mind's telling me. But if we were to take the time to actually check into what our body needs, then I think that's the greatest gift, because a lot of us don't take the time to be able to have this amazing intimate relationship with ourselves, because we're so in autopilot, uh, that we just get up and just do things, right? Because that's just how it's done. Or I've been told to do this, so I'll just do it because I've been told. But is that really in our heart of hearts why we want to do it? And it's the same with dieting and everything. I think, it's like, oh, we're always given put these things in front of us. Oh, this new rad, ketogenic diet. And I think it's just coming back to the basics of really, we have all the resources that we need, and everything is a balance. It is that, I guess the philosophy of yin and yang, they both coexist together. But if you do too much of yang, you're going to be depleted in your yin, which is that rest and your nourishing and nurturing. And then you do too much of yin, you're sometimes, I guess, like sitting in the yin, right? And that's why a lot of the sages were women, because we can actually sit in the yin, in the depth of our own despair, and then be okay with it. But if you're too much yin, then sometimes that can be like you're feeling really lazy and lethargic or depressed, and just you don't have any of that sort of like fire, the yang, to be able to get you to kind of move. So I think it's like fine, it's really, and everyone's balance is so different, right? It's finding what your balance is and what resonates with you, rather than and checking in, like you said today at the beginning.
Yeah, some really solid advice. I guess when it comes to taking back your mind, which is the concept behind this whole series, you talked a little bit about how you do that, between all the tools and the strategies that you've got personally. If you were to offer someone advice, say someone who would come into your clinic, about how might they start to go about doing that, what might you suggest?
So just a beautiful practice, is your left hand for women and onto their womb space, right hand for males, and then you would have your opposite hand, so left hand for womb, right hand for heart. And it's like in that moment you are giving yourself a hug, and then just checking in. Okay, what do I need today? What does my body need? What does my mind need? Just that practice of, I think, that then starts you to cultivate, a deeper practice with yourself, and you do that every day. And it's like, at the beginning you might be like, oh, hang on, my mind's saying so. Hang on, it's playing tricks on me. But it's like you can't get that wrong, because it's always the first thing that comes to mind. or it'll be just starting one thing that you can do daily for yourself. So it might be that you go for a walk, or you dedicate 5 minutes out of your time to do some breathing exercises. So I think it's really about finding one thing for yourself that you can do on a daily basis, because consistency is key. And then we start to see change as well. And when we are in that, I guess it's not it is a discipline, right? But I think that's what all the Eastern philosophies are, is that, they weren't living in a time where they had all these modern issues, phones and TVs and just all of that, right? They were just able to be in nature, have these amazing practices to connect back into themselves. So through that practice, they were able just to be guided and informed of what their next thing was, or follow the charm. Whereas we have so much input coming in that sometimes that communication gets cross-wired, and our body really is a hardware system of communication that's keeping us in this amazing state of flow and homeostasis. But it's all the other stuff that comes in that creates that disruption. So yeah, coming back home, right? And whatever that feels good, when that feels good in your heart, that's your soul talking.
Beautiful. Some very, very wise and sage advice there. Thank you.
Pleasure.
So time has absolutely flown, and I feel like I could sit here and talk to you for the next hour, but we will wrap it up there. But before we do, I'd love to ask you, if someone listening along to this wants to find out more about you and the work that you do, how can they do that?
Great. So you can just find us on Instagram under Angia Acupuncture Yoga. And we also have a website, angia.com.au.
Awesome. And last thing, what is your ask? What is something that we can help you with?
I think, it's just having conversations, isn't it, really? Just being here today with you is an opportunity for me to be able to share. So I think that alone is an ask, right? Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being a part of it. And I look forward to seeing you very soon.
Thanks, Aisling.
Thanks, Mands.